All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Rakakwadash, and double honor to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to all full elect, hearing this word in truth and in sincerity. Okay, I'm the brother Awalam from the GMS West Palm Beach Church. I'm back with another lesson. And through the Spirit, I want to do a quick lesson, concerning, Babylon, in this war with Iran, and pretty much how, the king of Babylon, has been giving, these threats, and pretty much, these threats, will lead to, or may very well lead to, these other nations, tag teaming this whole, man. All right, which they're already doing, but what I mean by that is, Babylon the Great, America, is still, wolfing at the mouth, despite seeing that, nations like Iran and, the surrounding nations, surrounding places, have the military capability. And these Americans are proud too, still talking about we have the greatest military, go Trump. You know what I'm saying? And at the end of the day, prophecy is going to play out and take this man out, man. Take Esau out. Take Babylon out altogether. But let's get the book of Jeremiah. Okay. Hammer of the earth. Because the reason why they're able to talk like that is because they're blessed with the sword. The fact that you're talking about, wiping a country or wiping a certain region off the map, why would you say something like that? Because you have the power to do so, the power of the sword. You see what I'm saying? So, Yahweh Shai, is gonna humble Esau in a big way. This is Jeremiah chapter 50 and verse 23. And it says, how is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How is Babylon becoming a desolation among the nations? You see? So, this is the leading factor that's going to lead to Babylon becoming a desolation among the nations, man. All right, it's going to all start with Jacob's trouble. When Yahweh Shai bring the collapse of this economy. All right, bring, total anarchy to the streets of America. And different things of that factor. You see? So the Lord, is gonna break, America down in front of these nations, man. He's gonna make this place a laughing stock in the times to come. And rightfully so. Because as it says a few verses higher, it says, let me see. Or was it 51? I can start from verse 1. Jeremiah 51 and verse 1, and it says, thus saith the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, behold, I will raise up against Babylon and against them that dwell in the midst of them, that rise up against me, a destroying wind. All right, that destroying wind is talking about the nuclear destruction. Because what's going to happen when the nuclear missiles fall, it's going to cause, a shockwave, the nuclear shockwave, that's going to pretty much wipe everything in its path. You see? You see that? So that's why moving forward after the destruction of Babylon the Great, and in the book of Joel, it talks about how the land is as the Garden of Eden before them, and after them is a desolation. We're roughly paraphrasing it. Why? Because the Lord is going to make Esau's habitat and habitations, desolate. You see, as is commonly quoted by brothers, in the Zondervan Bible Dictionary, that Edom is the nation that will receive no mercy from God. All right, and the nation of Edom is the so-called white man. Okay. The nation of Edom is the so-called white man, and they have a pending judgment. getting ready to happen. A pending judgment. You see? And so all this talk that they got going on, talking about how they gonna do this, do that, we waiting for Esau to do something, but we understand that the king's heart, as pursuant to Proverbs 21:1, is in the hand of the Lord. You see? But we're waiting for Esau to do something. That way prophecy, can get rolling. But it's up to the Lord to put it in his heart to do so. Okay? So, with that being said, let me keep reading. It says, verse 2, and I will send unto Babylon fanners that shall fan her, and shall empty her land, for in the day of trouble they shall be against her round about. See? They're going to be against her round about. So, these nations, they're going to hit America at every side, man. All right? You already got different nations among, the Babylonians, right? You got different nations among America. Like we always bring out, during Biden's term, they were letting, so-called migrants in, man. A lot of those migrants were coming from different parts of the world. You know what I'm saying? So now, you don't know who's in the country. You may have people that you're going to war with. You may have their own people, in your country. So these are the things that we see happening in our times, to where something may happen either from the outside or the inside. All right, but nonetheless, it's going to happen. The Lord willing, it happens soon. The Passover just happened last week. We just got through the Passover. We're in the week of Feast of Unleavened Bread. Okay, so the Lord, of course, we're in the Lord's time, but he may have something happen, soon. Lucky. He may have something happen soon, man. Okay, Esau is prouder than ever. All right, these people here in America are prouder than ever. So we can see what times that we're living in. Matter of fact, we can get that. Yeah, I'm gonna finish reading this verse 3. Against him that bendeth the bow, it's like against him that bendeth, let the archer bend his bow, and against him that lifteth up himself in the brigandine, and spare, it's like it. Where am I? And against him that lifteth himself up in the brigandine, and spare ye not her young men, destroy ye utterly all her host. You see, so the Lord is calling for the destruction of Babylon the Great, i.e. America, man. Okay? So, America's not ready for, really, they're not really ready for what's to come, although they act like they are. Alright? And this guy, DJT, being in office, he's got a spirit of pride upon the Americans, man. But that's as it should be, because the Lord wants Esau in that prideful spirit before he brings him down. Let's go to the book of Romans real quick, because before the Lord took Pharaoh down, Pharaoh was in a prideful spirit. Egypt was thriving. Oh no, I'm not talking about him. Egypt was thriving. You couldn't tell Pharaoh shit. Account in the scriptures is when the Lord said, let my people go. What did Pharaoh say? He said, who is the Lord that I should let his people go, that I should let Israel go? You see what I'm saying? So that was that pride within Pharaoh, to be like, who is the Lord? Which when he said that, he said, who is Yahweh? Because Moses went to the children of Israel with the name Yahweh. He also prophesied in the name of Yahweh. Okay, so let's get that real quick. So Pharaoh was like, who is Yahweh that I should let Israel go? This is Romans chapter 9 and verse 17. It says, for the scripture saith unto Pharaoh, even for this same purpose have I raised thee up, that I might show my power in thee, and that my name might be declared throughout all the earth. You see? So the Lord took Pharaoh from that high estate, from that lofty and proud state, and pretty much brought him down through the plagues, and eventually just took him out through the Red Sea, man. Him and his armies. So what you think getting ready to happen to the so-called white man, Esau Edom? All right, the man that runs the world right now. You see, he's at the height of his pride, and guess what? Like they say, the higher you are, the harder you fall. And that's what we're getting ready to see. We're getting ready to see the Edomites, the so-called white people, fall hard, because when they fall, they're going to hit rock bottom. Like, they're going to be on the bottom in the kingdom of heaven. That's the parable of the rich man and Lazarus, where, matter of fact, let's get it real quick. Luke 16, and I'm gonna get straight to the point. It's not a long parable, but I just want to hit these because I gotta go to the plant, so I gotta hit these points. This is Luke 16 and verse 22. It says, and it came to pass that the beggar represents Israel, because we're in Esau society. We're considered the poor, and therefore we're begging. And you got Jake out there begging Esau for certain things, i.e., whether it be food stamps, tax refunds, just little shit here in Esau's kingdom, that Jake survives off of. And it's like they got to beg for it to get it, whereas you got the elite, they living on the high horse right now. They ain't got to worry about shit. But then you got our people, that are living day to day begging Esau for crumbs. It says, and was carried by the angels into Abraham's bosom. The rich man also died and was buried. That pretty much represents a change of rulership, a change of power, because Abraham's bosom represents, the blessings, the promises that the Lord Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua made with Abraham. So what's going to happen is, Jake is eventually going to get the kingdom, because Abraham, the Lord promised, all right, the promises of Abraham, Salakia, word like this, the promises of Abraham fell unto Isaac, and then eventually fell unto Jacob. You see? So Jacob is going to be in, Abraham's bosom, meaning the blessings. The rich man also died and was buried, meaning what? Esau's kingdom eventually fell. Esau's kingdom died. And in hell, he lifted up his eyes, And hell is representing what? A condition. In his horrible condition, his lowly estate that he's going to be in the kingdom, he's going to see Israel, he's going to see Israel in their kingdom. He's going to see Jake in their kingdom thriving. And it says, being in torments, and seeth Abraham afar off, and Lazarus in his bosom. And he cried and said, Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus that he may dip the tip of his tongue, so like his dip the tip of his finger in water, and cool my tongue, for I am tormented in this flame. And what this talking about is that in the kingdom of heaven, the so-called white people, the Edomites, the Edomites, the so-called white people, okay, they're going to be in the kingdom suffering, right? They're going to be in the kingdom begging us for relief, begging us, to go easy on them. But ain't going to be no easy going on you Edomites, man. All right? The scripture says, how he that showed no mercy shall receive no mercy. I want to say, I'm quoting James, okay? It said, he that showed no mercy, shall receive no mercy. Okay, so in the kingdom of heaven, the Edomites ain't going to receive no mercy, man. And eventually after their 1,000-year term, the Lord going to do away with them. Verse 25 says, but Abraham said, Son, remember that thou in that lifetime receivest thy good things, and likewise Lazarus evil things, but now he is comforted, and thou art tormented, right? Because in the kingdom of heaven, Jake is going to be comforted. We're going to be in our blessing. You can read Revelation 21. Let's go to Revelation 21. This is a heartfelt scripture right here, as always. But it says, Revelation 21 in verse 1, it says, and I saw in heaven, and I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and first earth were passed away. You see? Just like how we read in Luke 16 where it says that the rich man died. That's talking about, all right, his rulership passing away. All right. Verse 2. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from the Most High out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, Behold, the tabernacle of the Most High is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people. The Most High himself shall be with them and be their God. You see, so this is that comfort that we're reading about in Luke 16. All right? The Israelites will be comforted in the kingdom of heaven because Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua is going to dwell among them. They're going to be in their kingdom. Verse 4 says, And the Most High shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow, nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain. For the former things are passed away. What former things? The former things being in Esau's kingdom, in the so-called white man's kingdom suffering. These are the former things. All right, it also speaks about that in the book of Peter where it talks about, all right, how the heavens shall pass away with a great noise. Okay. Let's go back to here and finish this off. I'm just going to breeze through it again, Lord willing. Luke 16 and verse 25, and it says, But Abraham said, Son, remember that thou in thy lifetime receivest thy good things. You see, Esau, Edom, in this lifetime, he received his good things. He received his blessings, which was beginning with the sword. All right? He had the fatness of the earth in his hand, gotten through the sword. So he received his good things, and he's lifted up. As it is written in Lamentations 4 and 22, Rejoice and be glad, O daughter of Edom, that dwellest in the land of Uz. Are rejoice and be glad, because you're in your kingdom. It says, and likewise, Lazarus evil things, right? All right, Israel received evil things in Esau's kingdom. Nothing but hell, waking up every day just to go to work, come back, eat, and do it all over again. You got to pay crazy taxes. Hey, there's just no comfort here in America because we're in captivity. It says, but now he is comforted, and thou art tormented, right? So like I read in Revelation 21, Israel, there shall be no tears. Why? Because the Lord is going to be amongst us. All right, we're going to be comforted in our kingdom, and thou art tormented. And the Edomites, they're going to go through hell in the kingdom. All right? Because Yahushua is coming back to put the so-called white man in slavery, along with the other nations. But the Edomites in particular, they're going to receive, all right, man, ain't no way to even describe it, man, because it's going to be so bad. They're going to receive the brunt of the captivity. And like I said, the other nations, like the so-called Africans, Indians, Chinese, and Japanese, they're going into slavery too, all right? But the ones that's going to get it the hardest are all the so-called white people, the Edomites of the Bible, okay? So, the Lord willing, this lesson was edifying, and Lord willing, it wasn't all over the place. I know Jake, could, because the original topic, came to mind, but, the Spirit do what it do, the things go around, but Lord willing, the point was had and edification went out altogether, and that's what's most important, within my lessons, so Lord willing, this was edifying. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Rakakadash, and double honor to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to those full like you on this word and truth and in sincerity. Until next time, I say shalom.